What's the worst punishment you ever received as a child? Just a warning guys, some of these are pretty heavy, so yeah, they're not for the faint-hearted. I thought it would be a good video to do though, to remind everyone that punishment can go a bit too far sometimes, and that maybe some of us didn't have it so bad growing up. Probably getting strangled by my dad after I stormed away from the dinner table while yelling that I hated eating with my parents because all they did was yell and curse at one another. Strangling sucks. Around the time I was 12 or 13, my stepdad strangled me with my little cousins downstairs simply because I was annoying him. I honestly thought I was going to die. He did a lot of things, but that was the worst. Probably when my mom spanked me with the back of her favourite hairbrush. Then the hairbrush broke and I got spanked some more because that was her favourite hairbrush. That's f***ed. At least my mom stopped it and called it if she broke the wooden spoon. Once made the mistake of saying the spanking didn't hurt, it sure hurt the next time. I grew up with my grandma and I can't exactly remember what I did, but next thing I know she's laying a pile of uncooked rice in the corner to kneel on for 10 minutes. It felt like I was kneeling in a gravel driveway with charred rocks. I've heard of this one at least. I saw it in a Law and Order episode. The kids had scars all over their legs and what appeared to be grains of rice embedded in their knees. Looked pretty brutal. I was bad at school, so my mom took all of my furniture. Literally all of it. I had to sleep and eat on the floor for a week. She did let me keep my favourite blankie though. My parents did this too when I was a kid, for weeks at a time, except they let me keep my mattress and a blanket. Even the decorations were taken off my walls. No stimulation except for homework, and once that was finished, I just stared off into space or made imaginary stories in my head or slept. An ass whooping from dad that his grip and my trying to run broke my arm. How was that explained to the doctor? 7 years old. I wouldn't move my hands from my butt, so my mom dragged me to the bathroom. While there, she lifted me up by my legs and attempted to give me a swirly. My hands immediately latched onto the toilet bowl to stop my head from falling in, then my mom freed up one of her hands to turn my ass red. After a few hits, my arm gave out and my head dropped hard into the toilet water. After that, she yelled at me for 5 more minutes and ordered me to take a shower. She still denies doing this or any of the other corporal punishment my sister and I were subjected to. Classic gaslighting. My stepbrother punched me in the face and gave me a bloody lip. My stepmother decided as a punishment she would hit us both with a belt. I don't know why I was in trouble for getting punched, but she held onto the end of the belt with the holes and swung the belt buckle at us. It hit the back of my right hand and I still feel the pain in the back of my hand when I squeeze something with it. I got punished for getting punched in the face. I still don't understand what I did wrong 23 years later. That reminds me of the time my brother punched me in the nose and I had blood gushing all over my new silk shirt. It was the 90s. I was the one who got screamed at and punished for ruining the shirt because I shouldn't have aggravated my brother. We were in the car and all I did was start talking to him. I was in kindergarten and I peed myself because I was having too much fun watching a movie in class. The teacher put me in the bathroom with the lights out and door closed for the rest of the movie, 45 minutes or so, and it was storming really badly outside. I'm still afraid of the dark and loud noises. Punishing a child for having an accident just makes it worse. My mom used to punish my sister and I whenever we wet the bed or had an accident. I got over it eventually, but my sister wet the bed for years after she was potty trained. Mom would make us wear a diaper or tell people we weren't potty trained. She was basically trying to shame us into not having accidents. My mom used to literally back me into a corner and then start swinging. She'd stop after she got tired or thought I learned my lesson. The next day she'd buy me a little crystal knick-knack from the drugstore as an apology. It would happen about twice a year. I'd threaten to call the police. She'd say, "They won't believe you and arrest you for lying." This went on for years. One day, when I was 16, she thought I was being mouthy, so she walked up behind me and backhanded me in the back of my head. I had enough of it and pushed her away. She started screaming to my dad that I was attacking her. He came in and put his hands on me, and I wrapped my hands around his throat until he tapped and was begging me to stop. I left home for almost a month, couch surfing and probably putting myself in way too dangerous situations for a minor. I didn't go back home until my dad finally apologized to me when he got the truth of what happened from my mom. As soon as I got back home, I gave away or tossed all the crystal apology gifts from my mom. I confronted my mother about all this a couple years ago on Mother's Day. She denies any of it ever happening and claimed, "I think I'd remember if that happened." My dad can't verify any of it since she'd always do it when he was at work, but he got real quiet when I mentioned it. I'm pretty sure he knows it happened and feels guilty that he never knew. I'm 32 years old now. I'm on good terms with both of my parents. Well, in all truth, I'm on good terms with my dad and I can tolerate my mother. I've never forgiven her or ever forgotten what she did. She can claim whatever she wants, but I know what happened. I have the scars and fractures which never quite healed right. I have the occasional nightmare about it to this day. I can only hope that I rise above it all and don't make petty decisions when I'm in control and she's helpless. I'm so sorry for what happened to you, and further sorry for dumping all this bullshit here. You know what happened despite what she claims. Don't ever feel bad about staying true to yourself on what happened. All you can do now is hope that the future brings the best for yourself due to your own strength and perseverance. My uncle would have me stand T-pose and hold books. Not too bad, then I have to stand on my toes. Then he would put nails sticking up under my heels. He would dare me to relax. Is that a punishment or an attempt by uncle at violating a Geneva Convention? Both. That's clearly sadism. It's a stupid punishment because it takes long and forces you to constantly watch to make sure they don't cheat. It only makes sense for sadists because they enjoy watching it and don't want it to be over fast. Yeah, that's sick. Hands tied behind my back with a belt so I couldn't cover myself, and then beat about the face, neck and shoulders with another belt for several minutes. Dad was a real piece of shit. See, that's not a punishment. That's flat out abuse. Just about everything in this thread is abuse. I say this phrase enough for it to be depressing, but punishment shouldn't be creative. Once you reach that point, it stops being about discipline and more about being sadistic. I wrote "fuck you" in the dust on the back window of the after-school program's creeper van. Dad picks me up, they tell him about it, he doesn't say shit the whole way home. Go to your room, pull down your pants and wait, I'm going to get my belt. Dinner time rolls around and I'm still sitting there scared out of my mind. I was like 9 or 10. Pops comes in and says, pull up your pants and get yourself together, dinner time. And that was the end of it. I'd rather he just wailed on my ass than make me sit there for a couple of hours waiting for it. Holy shit, Pops, what a ride. Got put on restriction for 6 months for doing something my mom said I could do, but then she said she never gave me permission to do it even though another adult was sitting there and confirmed he heard her give me permission to do it. Also had to pick up all the rocks in the vacant lot next to our house and put them in a pile on weekends as part of the punishment. That something was, rode my bicycle to the library. That's it? Bruh. My dad once told me that if I let the word shit cross my lips again, I truly have shit cross my lips. I didn't listen and said it again that night, and he took a piece of fresh dog poop and made me hold it on my tongue for 30 seconds. I cried and never cursed again until I was 21. That's a literal health hazard right there. That's what I told him. He felt bad even as he was doing it, but he said that he never lied, and when he made a promise he had to follow through on it. I told him it wasn't safe, and he said, we just had the dog checked for diseases and parasites, you're going to be okay. I hate to do this, but if you really want that word in your mouth, you need the real thing. My mom grabbed me by both shoulders and shook me until I went through a wall, but I thought I was never going to breathe again when she put both knees on my chest and yelled at me while holding me down and shaking my shoulders. I did a double take when you said through a wall. Fortunately, I cleared the wall studs because nails in your back are no fun, although plaster is much harder than drywall. My parents homeschooled me in my last year of school because I had a boyfriend, lost my seat and scholarship to the college I had early acceptation for since the 11th grade, and then took my RESP for themselves to go on a cruise when I went with a different program because I didn't have the marks for the original program. Oh my goodness, that's terrible. I hope you are doing well now. That is super controlling behaviour. I ended up marrying that boyfriend. We have a child now and another one on the way. My mum and I are on good terms after a lot of therapy. Made to drink distilled vinegar. It was probably from ages 5 to 10 that my parents used it as punishment. They would rotate between spanking, whipping our asses with the leather swatches or the branches of our beloved willow tree, putting us in corners for extended periods of time, if we cried or complained, 20 minutes double to 40 and so on, old-fashioned soap, and the god-forbidden vinegar. I still have major teeth and jaw problems at 22, and my stomach, esophagus, has never felt normal. Wow, occasionally drinking vinegar for a punishment affected you that bad physically? What does it do to you? How much were they making you drink? It wasn't occasionally. My parents slowed down the rate at which they spanked me and my siblings once my mom had hit my older sister so hard that she was covered in bruises. That's when they pulled the soap out. Soap is bearable, in my opinion, so they saved the vinegar for me. It was often enough that I vividly remember having to pull the vinegar out of the fridge myself over and over until it was easy to drink. At that point, grounding me was seemingly just as effective. I shit my pants in the 4th grade. I don't know why, but I had a condition that made me hold it all in and not use a toilet. This had been going on and off my entire life. Not a problem anymore. My dad was furious. I remember being naked in my bedroom with my dad. My dirty underwear was on the floor, and my dad had a hard grip on my arm while he screamed and yelled at me. He yelled at me things like, "How old are you? No one is going to want to be your friend," and "You're disgusting." He then beat me with his belt. My dad worked at a flour mill and spent his days stacking 100-pound flour bags 10 high, so he was built like the f***ing Hulk. He would then rub my shit-filled underwear in my face, making me look at it and smell it. Pediatric fecal retention syndrome. My daughter has this. It isn't your fault. My dad used to tell us he'd sell us to the gypsies if we didn't behave. Once you get a bit older, you realise he's bluffing. At least I hope he was. This led to one hilarious incident when my dad shouted at my 7-year-old brother that he was going to get the gypsies and make them come get me. He picked up the phone and started dialing a number. My 7-year-old brother smiled, knowing full well he wasn't really, but my 4-year-old brother burst into tears and ran to my dad screaming, "No, no, don't sell Benny to the chippies. Please, don't do it," bawling his eyes out. Total backfire. Compared to all the other depressing stories on this post, this one is hilarious. Definitely the buck rag. I still feel sick thinking about it. For those who don't know, a buck rag is a rag that's been rubbed all over a male goat in rut. It's used for some goat breeding purposes. Lady goats love the smell. In our town, some parents would buy these rags from goat farmers to punish children for misbehaving. You take the child out back, pull the rag out of the jar, drape it over the child's face and tie a knot in the back. It's not dangerous, but it makes them smell the horrible goat odour. I never saw what the big deal was until I was buck ragged as a 16-year-old girl for cursing out my parents. I puked. A lot. I told my brother to fuck off and die. I turned around to a 2x4 to the chest, then spent 8 hours total picking up tiny ass rocks out of the yard and putting them in a bucket. When the bucket was full, my dad would walk around the yard throwing them around, then I picked them back up again. You got hit in the vest with a 2x4 because your dad swung at you. Yeah. I got the wooden spoon a lot, and once my mom was so angry, not particularly at me, just in general, which is more messed up, that she threw a porcelain teapot at the back of my head while I was going down the stairs. But the scariest beating I saw happened to my best friend in high school. We were supposed to be having a sleepover at her house, but instead we went out and partied till 3 AM. When we got to her house, her dad was up. I'm pretty sure he was drunk, and he was pissed. He beat her with a field hockey stick for what seemed like forever. She was in bad shape. Suffice to say, I never slept over there again. For everyone asking if I called the cops or reported her dad, 2 things. I was a 15-year-old and never experienced anything like that in my life. I was definitely in shock and scared for my life as this was unfolding. Obviously, that's not an excuse. I later mentioned to her that I was thinking about telling someone, but she begged me not to as her mom was not in the picture and she was the only one taking care of her younger brother and did not want to be separated from him. She moved out with her brother as soon as we graduated high school. Either the cigarette burns to my scalp or the days without food because I misbehaved. My parents were, and still are, meth addicts. F them. Jeez, I hope you don't have to deal with them anymore. I cut them off years ago. My mother occasionally sends me a text message saying, "Happy birthday, I love you," and I'm wondering if she's sober since she's got the date right this year. My dad, well, I haven't talked to him in 15 years. He came into a place I used to work a few years back and stood about 3 feet away from me and didn't even recognize me. So I guess that's a win. So my dad found an old wooden hockey stick that was thrown away. He saw it and thought it would make a great weapon to beat us with. He called it Mr. Sticko and he broke it over my back for something I did. That one really sucked. Naming the weapon you use to abuse your children just seems so damn creepy to me. I don't know why. Your dad sounds like a Mr. Pricko. When I was around 6 years old, my stepdad woke me up in the night by pulling me out of the bed and yelling that I had got piss on the toilet seat. He took me out to the front porch, and while he was paddling me, the rail I was bracing against broke and I fell off the porch. I had poison ivy put all over my back, so guess how I turned out, lol. Tip: lightly rub some sandy dirt on it. Had friends whose parents forced them over fire with hot spices thrown in it. Gladly, the general consensus is that this is an outdated and terrible cultural practice in punishing anyone, so less of it is happening nowadays. Imagine hot spices, now imagine breathing the smoke that comes from burning those spices. It used to be a torture technique in East Africa. You don't want to have a person in that kind of smoke for more than a few seconds because they'll die before giving you the intel you need. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was used as a genuine military torture technique throughout history. What the f***?